and a small plane flying into it or something. We're trying to get more information. And they kept that picture right on there. And then everybody in the world could see that second plane coming right in. And I turned around now and I said, we're at war. And we're still in that war. We're still in it. And a lot of people, I think, we have big problems in this country right now, trying to destroy. Well, I don't want to make this comparison, but I will. To me, it felt as hard. When that tower went down, thousands of lives were lost. And we knew some of those people because Ellen was working in New York at the time and working with some of those people, and she'd been working in that building in the second tower that went down. And everybody who'd ever spent any time in New York knew that, knew the people. But we saw the reaction of that city. Because those fire trucks and firefighters and emergency people and the police and everybody in law enforcement went down into that.
Yeah.
And that was, we couldn't do nothing but watch it. We went over to Cooter's. We just started for a year or so then. A little place where we started this whole thing we do in the Sperryville. And I said, well, we need to go over there. And a bus pulled up just after we got there. It was a busload of English high school kids who were touring the United States, and they were on their way to D.C. And they come through the mountains and down and into Sperryville, and they understood that they could not go into the city then. And it was explained. So we spent several hours watching the television and keeping up with the reports. And I was helping these kids contact their parents back in England, in London, to let them know that they hadn't been in the city, that they were okay and all that. And the other day I got an email from one of those kids, a girl in England, thanking Al and I for hosting them that day and for talking to them about what it meant to our country and what it meant to their country. Because they had been through that in World War II, planes bombing their cities and all that. And the resolve that we had to have in one thing or another. But 20 years later, I don't think anybody who watched that can get it out of their mind. And I think at a time like this, we have to redouble our resolve and our understanding that and not to take this country or our freedoms for granted.
That's right.
Amen.
Down in Richmond, Virginia the other day, the governor suddenly decided he was going to tear down the largest equestrian statue in this nation. Beloved, and something that I'm sure a vast majority of the people of Virginia and of the United States did not want to see happen. But he did it. Within a day, he took down this beautiful statue of General Robert E. Lee because of political payoff to someone. Politically correct, whatever. But, we are a nation that is founded upon differences of opinions. That we have that freedom to believe and see, and we see history differently depending on the depth of our studies and on, our interest. In this case, I'm descended from a number of people who fought for the United States of America. David and I were talking about that. I had uncles in the Pacific who were terribly wounded, made it back home at the end of World War II. We had people in World War I. I had cousins in Vietnam and so on. But we also had people, direct ancestors of mine who fought in the war between the states in the American Civil War and raised in the South. I also am descended from a man who was born in 1650 in Northampton County, who was a slave, a black slave, named Gabriel Jacobs. He was freed in 1690. His sons and his family went down to North Carolina, and that's how I came out of North Carolina, I guess. But So this issue is complicated and it's nuanced. There's a lot to it. And every one of us in this room have different feelings about different things. That's what we resolve as patience and understanding and sharing and freedom of opinion and speech. Now that's being destroyed by demagogues. And, we don't have any choice but to stand up and fight back. The flag of of course, the General Lee. I mean, 80 million people watch the General Lee, every Friday night, all over the world. And not a word was said. There was no complaint. Now they're tearing down the man's statue. They're telling us that we're bigots. Even though have African blood and grew up in a black neighborhood, we were the only white folks over there, I tell you. And was deeply involved in the civil rights struggle in the cities and all of that. I know where I come from. And I'm very proud of how our nation, particularly the South, came together and bridged those old differences.
Yep.
And now, we made such progress. But now that is being destroyed by demagogues. And they've taken control. And I think that we need to understand that with all of these rights we have come responsibilities. And our basic responsibility in this case is to fight back, to not be afraid of what we think. And not be afraid of what we think and not be afraid to say it. And we have to. We have to get involved at this point. So I remember right after 9/11 coming back, Elma and I took a trip down to where I grew up down on the docks in Portsmouth, and I had a gig down there. We drove back, we came back the long way, really, but the most scenic way back through the tobacco and peanut country and down in Tidewater and back up to, took the Jamestown ferry across the James River to Jamestown, then drove up, and all along the way, we went through Smithfield, Virginia. We drove, took the old road up to Richmond, and took the back way from there. And all along the way, this was a week or so after 9/11, all along the way we saw flags, we saw American flags everywhere. It was sort of, this whole country stood up and said, no, they ain't gonna do that to us. And that was a reckoning. Today, 20 years later, I didn't see very many flags. I said, but if you go across the Shenandoah River down here on that construction site, that bridge, there's a flag right there. And that made me feel that I was back in the real America.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyhow, got all emotional about that, but we've got some folks here with us today who are doing some recording here. A group called the Daytones. Daystar? I'm sorry, Daystar.
They were the Daytones and then they changed it.
And then they were the Night Stars, but now they let them come out. Now they let them come out in the daytime.
Daytime,
So
yeah.
fellas, I got an idea. That's these guys over here. Well, it's a trio. They're going to come up, and I ask that y'all listen to the fellas sing.